it's building my business just by sharing authentically what I'm going through and the challenges that I'm facing. So I think that's also the power of vulnerability and authenticity on a platform like LinkedIn.
Perfection is actually the imperfection of being human when you build your online brand.
From a pure producer development standpoint, we still have a ways to go as an industry to hopefully bring that percentage basis up so that we're not scaring people away from the industry.
The industry gets activity and productivity confused.
Yeah.
We think that if we're making activity that we're making forward progress when we're really just on a treadmill running, whereas if you're being productive, you're taking that activity and actually turning it into something, and you're doing the right activities to make forward progress.
I loved production. I love the idea of helping business owners and executives solve for problems, to partner with them, to be client facing. And I didn't want to be behind the desk anymore, just only broking deals and passing my work off to other people to then present to clients.
Agencies are just so quick to offer a low base salary, thinking, it's not that big of an investment for us to bring somebody in.
Set our producers up for success. Take that desperation piece out of it. Obviously, we all want to produce. We're in sales. That's the end goal. But our industry is very unique in the sense that it's a longer sales cycle. It's a relationship that you're building. It's a divorce that you're causing between a service provider that they're already working with. You don't have to be an insurance expert.
The way I describe it to an underwriter is, I'm the decision maker, my client isn't. They're gonna go with whatever it is that I recommend, because I'm the one who does the due diligence. If I wasn't the decision maker to present that to them, they could just go buy their insurance on the internet and get the result that they want to get from a price standpoint.
Decide what you want to be known for and build your brand around those pillars. You have to be educational. You have to be, authentic to who you are, and you have to show a little bit of your personality, because your brand is yourself as a person. It's going to look a little bit different than what your company's brand looks like, and that's good. That's what you want.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game. I am really fortunate today because I have gotten to batch record 3 completely different episodes. And now that I'm out of the InsurTech mode, I can go back into the producer mode. And I have got an exceptional guest for us to do that today, Ms. Madison Baker, who is a vice president with Marsh McLennan. And she is really active on LinkedIn. You probably already know who she is based on her presence there. But if you don't, you will after this episode is over if I do my job right. So before we waste any more time just shooting the breeze, Madison, welcome. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm doing great, David. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. I really appreciate what you do in our industry, specifically for producers. So I think it's going to be fun to talk about branding in the industry and being a female producer and all those good things.
Absolutely. So I will tell you, I'm a little disappointed that you don't have your puppy with you. I mean, I know that and it's funny because I think that the two of us came to that realization of how much reach you can get with pets if you share them at the exact same time, because I literally had posted something, I don't remember what it was, but it just went off on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And then it was like 2 days later, I saw that you had your puppy post. I'm like, oh my goodness, we're going right down the same playbook at this point. Although it's not really a playbook, it's kind of authentic posting. And I think that that's something that people, miss and actually kind of desire a little bit, because everything has to be perfect when we put it out there for the public. And I think that perfection is actually the imperfection of being human when you build your online brand. So we can go down that rabbit hole. But before we do, why don't you just kind of set the table, give everybody a little bit about your background, and then get you up to where you're at today and what you're doing with Marsh McLennan. And then we will be running and gunning.
Sure, that sounds great. So I have been in the industry for 11 years, which sounds wild to say. I got into the industry on more of a paved path. I know a lot of people, they typically fall into the industry, but I was kind of chosen to get into the industry. I studied risk management at the University of Georgia. And funny enough, my dad led the risk management practice for Accenture, but if you know Accenture, you know that they're a management consulting firm. So risk management for him was hedging utilities and interest rate risk and all these really
probably like Forex and stuff like that.
Yes,
Exchange rates. Yeah.
And so when he saw the risk management major, he was like, "Oh, they have a major for this now. You can follow in my footsteps." And I get to school and I take all my intro classes. And my intro to risk management was a homeowners insurance 101 class. And so I called my dad and I was like, "Hey, this actually isn't risk management like what you do. This is insurance." And he wanted me to change my major immediately. But what I realized as a young 18-year-old was there's 30 people in this homeowners insurance class, and there's 350 in my finance class. I think the opportunity is here. And so I stuck with it. I ended up getting a job, funny enough. My first job in insurance was with a company called MHBT, which is now MMA. So I'm working for the same company that I worked for 12 years ago when I got into the industry as a young intern. So it's kind of come full circle at this point.
That's cool. And I mean, to your point, it's kind of like when I finally bit the bullet and put personal lines in the agency. I fought it, I fought it, I fought it, but I was able to go out and I was over, number one, I'm not the producer that's on the golf course. Like I have to introduce myself when I go to where I have memberships because I'm just never there.
Yeah.
But I went to it just so happened we had a good week. I took the guys out. We played around to golf and we walked into the clubhouse and grabbed something for lunch first. And I said, fellas, the difference between this time that we're here and the last time we were here is now everybody is your prospect because literally we can offer something to everybody in the room. And I think it was an eye-opening moment for them too to realize that, okay, now we're getting somewhere. You know, it's not just going to be the troubled workers comp or whatever else. We have the ability to literally meet any need. And I think, I fought that for a long time, but it was my own mental bias that caused that to happen just because I know my limitations. I have a very difficult time dealing with the fact I could be on the phone talking to somebody who's paying us 50 grand a year in commissions. And my next call is Mrs. Jenkins, who's upset that her homeowners went up 20 bucks a month and wants me to shop every carrier.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do well in that situation. So I stay out of personal lines in the
Mhm.
agency. I oversee it at a very high level, but actually I'm blessed enough that my oldest son is the one who runs it for us now and does a really, really good job doing it. So proud papa moment
That's
there.
amazing. I love it. Keep it in the family.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's the easiest way. By the way, if you're an agency owner and somebody is calling and calling and calling on the acquisition route, just tell them you have a kid in the agency and that you're going to keep it in the family, and then they'll quit calling. So that's
I
how I
love
got
it.
rid of
That's a
them.
strategy in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you got into the industry. And by the way, UGA has got a great risk management program. One of my best friends, Josh Gurley, has a degree from there in that and has become an exceptional agency owner and producer, is probably a result to a certain degree of that foundation. Where did you start? I mean, like, what did you do? You walk in your first day, because I can tell you, my first day was not probably what everybody would want. I walk in, I'm told your job is to go out and produce accounts that are 25 to 50,000 in revenue. How do I do that? That's your job to figure out. You're the producer. Figure out how it's going to work. You've got a year to do it. At the end of the year, if you haven't made enough money to justify us keeping you around, then we're going to wish you luck and you can go somewhere else. But literally zero support, to be honest
Mhm.
with you. And it's not necessarily that it was the fault of the people that I went to work for at the time. We were essentially a startup. I was actually one of the first seven or eight people in the first commercial dedicated producer that was hired by what's now the Baldwin Group. So
Oh, wow.
I was at Baldwin back when we were Baldwin Insurance Group here in Tampa, and I was their top commercial producer for the first, 2.5 years of my career. And then decided, well, you know what? I love Lowry to death, but my last name's not Baldwin, and my name's never going to be on the outside of the building. And
Uh,
to be honest with you, Madison, I'm not the kind of person who's wired to work for somebody else. I
I
have to
get
be
it.
able to make the decisions on the fly. And, sometimes I make mistakes and learn from them, but I course correct very quickly. And so that's how I got into, agency
Yeah.
ownership. But over time, we began to build more and more structure, which obviously they have these days. But to think that I was there and it was just a bunch of us in a cubicle farm at one point and it's turned into this monstrosity that it is
Yeah.
today is actually a pretty cool thing, to see how far they've come.
Yeah, I mean, the industry, I think to a certain extent still hasn't quite figured it out. I think we're light years ahead of probably, where your experience started in terms of producer development and setting people up for success. I actually didn't start as a producer. So
Oh,
my first role was actually as a property broker for a large public brokerage firm. And I think the idea behind the program that they had was we're going to give you a taste of broking deals. We're going to give you a taste of customer service, and then you kind of pick your path. And about 6 months into that role, they actually chose me to represent our office in this program to develop producers internally that were going to, in theory, attack the middle market. So this was a large global firm that didn't do middle market business. So they chose me and 11 other people in the region to train as producers. But the funny thing is they wanted us to chase middle market business, but they taught us how to review like 10Ks and 10Qs and go through publicly available financial information for large publicly traded organizations, which of course, as we know, is not available in the middle market. So I learned all of these amazing skills to understand and ask good questions for executives in the public business space, but didn't really have the framework or understanding of how to chase middle market business. But I learned through that program that I loved production. I loved the idea of helping business owners and executives solve for problems, to partner with them, to be client facing. And I didn't want to be behind the desk anymore, just only broking deals and passing my work off to other people to then present to clients, right? So at that point, it was kind of eye-opening to me that there was this path that I could take. Because at that point, I'd only seen producers really in and out of the office, guys that you saw every once in a while that were off doing things that you just had no idea what they were doing with their days. And so I didn't know that would be available to someone like me. But then I was recruited very serendipitously by another large middle market firm in my first production role. And so went over there, quickly had success and built a pretty large book. And that was my entrance into production. And I will say, they did a phenomenal job of setting someone like me up for success. I think that if you can't make it at that firm, you probably can't make it anywhere else, because the training and platform that they had in place for someone like me was the best that I've experienced being at 3 different firms and getting to see kind of how they did it. And so that's really what I cater my success to, was having a platform where I could actually grow. And it wasn't just, hey, make 100 phone calls today, hope and pray that one of those ends up in a meeting, and then maybe take a senior producer out with you and split the deal 50. It wasn't like that. So I think that's why I had the success that I had. And now I get the opportunity to mentor our younger generation here at MMA and bring them up in a similar fashion to the way that I was given the opportunity, which is a really cool kind of first full circle experience for me.
yeah, I think honestly that's the struggle that I would say the average agency that's not a national brand has, because you only have so many resources that you can use. And if you're our industry is archaic to a certain degree in technology if you get outside of a certain circle of agencies. I think it's fair to say that.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the ability to leverage technology or the desire to leverage technology to help you do those things, then you're probably going to continue to lose your best talent. But worse, you're probably going to run people out of the industry that really could have been successful if
Yeah.
you'd have just had the ability to give them what they needed to get them off the ground. And, I've seen it time and time again. There's a big difference between the producer who has all the tools and refuses to use them, and the one that really wants the tools and doesn't have any access.
Exactly. And I still think if you look at the industry at large, I think the producer success rate is still maybe 20 to 30%, which is really bad when you
But
think
it's way
about
better than it used to be.
True. Everything's relative. But I remember when I was at my prior firm, There were probably 7 new producers when I was first hired, like unvalidated producers. And by the time I resigned, I was the only one left.
Wow.
And then there were, 10 more that they hired after me. And now I think maybe only a couple of them are left. So even when you have great training and resources, it's not necessarily a guarantee that everyone's going to make it. I think there are inherent skill sets and types of people that are just cut out to be producers. So there's some of that. There's also some of luck and relationships and network, and those things certainly play a role. But from a pure producer development standpoint, we still have a ways to go as an industry to hopefully bring that percentage basis up so that we're not scaring people away from the industry. Because to your point, a lot of times there is successful people that go on to be super successful in tech sales or medical sales, or insert whatever sales that you want to, that left the insurance industry because they were like, oh, I was set up to fail, and that's on us as an industry.
Yeah, I think, my perception, I've got 20 years in at this point, so a little bit longer than you have. But what I've seen over time is where the gap falls and fails producers is in the prospecting realm, right?
Yeah.
And teaching them how to prospect and build the pipeline the right way. What I've seen, and again, it's relative to my own experience, so I'm interested in your thoughts on this, but I see people who get hired for their Rolodex or what their family relationships are. And this is really prevalent for like the national brand financial planning and life insurance firms as much as anything else. And you burn through your Rolodex, and what do you have left? Nothing.
Yeah.
And, now all of a sudden you're going into year 2 or year 3, and you may have had a reasonable year in year 1, but you don't have anything to fall back on because the only thing you brought to the table was generational relationships. Nobody taught you how to go out and prospect and start building organically. So from my perspective, you may or may not know this about me. I don't hire people from inside the insurance industry. I hire business to business salespeople that have a proven track record somewhere else, because what I found is a lot of the legacy you can agree or disagree with this because this may be a more controversial statement, but I feel like if you're a producer, you're not looking for a job. If you're a good producer, you either have golden handcuffs in the form of equity or something else tying you to the agency, or if you're a more entrepreneurial, really good producer, you just go open your own agency because you can do that and you have the mind to do it. But the people that I see that are going around that are constantly looking for jobs, they're at Marsh one year, and the next year they're at Aon, the next year they're at Willis, or they're at smaller agencies or whatever, and they just bounce around and around. That's not going to help the industry at all that way. We're just sending people from place to place, and they never really find their way. But if you bring business to business salespeople in who are already having to knock on 50 doors a day to sell office supplies, to get one person to buy, a case of paper or whatever, which my top producer came from Quill, I don't have to teach them that. Now I can talk about, here's how you're going to build a pipeline in insurance. These are the tools you need. This is the talk track for what we're going to talk about. Don't worry about whether you understand technical insurance knowledge. It's not even part of the conversation when you're prospecting to begin with. If you can go out and knock on the doors and get the introductions, I can support you on the other side, and we can learn together along the way. But I can't give you my time to teach you all of the things about the insurance and risk management things we talk about if you're not getting me velocity on appointments, because I know that if you take me out, I'm confident enough in my own skill set, we're going to get enough deals closed that we can continue down this road. That's number one. Number two is you can't do that with 5 people at a time. The average agency can't bring in multiple producers and nurture them to the point of success. You really have to pick and choose and get the best candidate that you can and bring them in and really invest in that person. Then when you're ready to grow again, now you've got somebody who knows the ropes pretty well, plus you still have yourself, and you can maybe bring 2 people in and each mentor them, and then it multiplies from there. But I think a lot of times agencies are just so quick to offer a low base salary, thinking, it's not that big of an investment for us to bring somebody in. And back when, I'm sure it's way more now, but when I first got into the industry, it was like, we'll give you $25,000 year one. And, it's going to be, it's really a negligible amount of money. Nobody can live off of that. Couldn't live off of it back then, but it was easier to validate. And so now year two, you get past the 25 or whatever it is, and maybe you move up to 40 or 45, and you can stair step that way. But a lot of people didn't even validate at 25 because they didn't know what they were doing or who to talk to.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We're aligned on a lot of things that you just said. I think that as an industry, a lot of the larger firms just throw stuff at the wall to see what sticks. So they have a budget to hire 10 producers. They're going to hire those 10 producers. They're going to try to get the cheapest talent, to your point, mostly out of college, new people, first job, or maybe someone, to your point, like from a different sales industry that's had success that wants to get into insurance. And then the strategy is let's run the numbers. If 30% of these people make it, that's going to be X amount of revenue that will pay for this group in its entirety. And then the ROI is there. So let's do it. There's really no strategy like how you do it with, okay, this person has had success here. They understand business. They understand how to have business conversations. They understand how to ask good questions. Like those skill sets are intangible and they can translate into this industry really well. I think the one area that's a little bit tough with that, though, David, is the insurance industry, at least in my opinion, with the types of businesses that I'm chasing and I'm working with, the sales cycle can be really long. It can be a year, it can be 2 years, it can be 3 years. You're working with these companies that are spending sometimes millions of dollars on insurance. You're not just gonna come in there and cause a divorce overnight. It takes time to nurture. And so sometimes you get people from a high transactional sales environment and maybe it's a little bit uncomfortable for them, or the transition doesn't really go as well because they're envisioning one thing and it ends up being another. And so I think really it comes down to understanding the person, understanding their skill set, and making a business decision on does it seem as though this person, we could plug them in this position and they'll have success. So I think as an industry at large, we're so hyper focused, at least in the larger agency space, on number of producers over quality of producers. And that's been something that I've been trying to preach is, guys, we can have a higher success rate if we just focus on the quality of the people and not the number. So that's certainly a battle that I've been fighting for quite a while.
But you know what, though? That's something that runs rampant across multiple things in the insurance industry, because one of the issues that I've always had is with carriers specifically, and it's the same kind of a deal. No, we need you to give us X number of submissions because we know that if you give us this many submissions, we're going to quote this many, you're going to present, and then you're going to bind this many. And that's not how my agency works. Like, we don't shoot to miss. You know what I mean? I don't have it is a privately held, smaller agency. I mean, we're reasonably sized, but I don't have the luxury of missing on more than I win. And so I want to make sure that if we get to the point that we're going to go in and actually spend the time and energy and capital to work with a company, that we're going to get compensated for doing that. And I mean, it's one of the reasons why that I think it's tough for a carrier to understand. We're not even coming to market till we've already been hired. I'm not going to come quote business hoping your underwriter gives me the terms, conditions, and pricing that I need to get a deal done, because that's not sticky business for me. I'm going to go after accounts that have problems. I'm going to show them the solution to those problems. We're going to begin to implement them before the insurance renewal ever happens, so I can make that part of my submission to show you the incremental progress we've made, that we've already identified top loss drivers and the things that are making the account in the condition that it's in right now, but show you that they're committed to it and we've already done things. And at that point, I'm going to come to the marketplace, and ultimately the way I describe it to an underwriter is I'm the decision maker. My client isn't. They're going to go with whatever it is that I recommend, because I'm the one who does the due diligence. If I wasn't the decision maker to present that to them, they could just go buy their insurance on the internet and get the result that they want to get from a price standpoint. And I think they have a hard time getting it because the It's that same like data-driven metrics thing. And you know what? We can preach about the way we think all we want, but they've got decades of numbers that say, nah, we're profitable the way that it is. No change, no reason to change it.
Yeah, yeah. And it drives me crazy, David, how on each side of the business, the broker side, the carrier side, the wholesaler side, it's like everyone looks at numbers on a spreadsheet and they're like, if we get this number of submissions, if we get this number of producers, it's going to lead to X. And I get it. We're very analytically driven, and we have to be able to look at numbers to forecast conclusions, right? But this is a people business at the end of the day. When you're making decisions on who to hire and what the potential that you see in that person, stop looking at the numbers. Stop looking that you can hire them for $40,000 a year and start looking at, can they succeed in this business? Because at the end of the day, this is someone's livelihood. This is their career. We should be setting people up for success and wanting them to win. But I think it's really hard when we're so numbers driven, especially in, the public organization space, where we get to think, we have to think more about spreadsheets and less about people sometimes. And that's really tough.
Well, my thing is, it's a real logical question. So let me get this straight. You want me to come in and validate quickly, but you want me to sell a product or a solution that takes on average 18 months to close.
Yeah.
How do you do that in a year? I mean, those numbers don't line up. So you have to have some level of luck, some level of a database of contacts that you can call on, but I don't want to harp there. So one of the things that I think the industry suffers from is a lack of equality when it comes to minorities and, gender specifically. Yeah. I can tell you that some of the absolute deadliest producers I know are female producers because they think about problems differently than what men do. I think that's a biological fact. Our brains are wired differently and we approach things differently. It doesn't mean one's better than the other or one's right and one's wrong. It's just different. And that's okay. That's what makes the world go round is the diversity. But our industry seems to lag behind in promoting diversity. And I almost feel like when they do, it's something that's forced and it's because we were told we had to. Like when I tell my kids, take out the trash, they're not joyous about taking out the trash. They're doing it because I said, you need to do this. I think that and that's maybe not the best correlation, but I do think to a certain degree that the industry realizes it has a problem. And I don't know that they're motivated to do things because it's the right thing to do, but it's because we have to do it because the optics are bad. Yeah. And that's not how you drive change. And that's not how you solve problems. And so I say that to preface the question, coming in as a female producer, what disadvantages do you think that you faced, number one, and what advantages do you think that you had? Because I do think you probably had a little of each.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. That's certainly the case. I think that I'll just be honest. The insurance industry is still an old boys club in a lot of ways.
Male, stale, and pale. I say it all the time.
Male, stale, pale, exactly. And so, and that's not going to change anytime soon, unfortunately. But we're certainly making headway. Whether that is, with good intentions that they want to promote diversity, or because the optics of having diversity is important, I'm not sure. But I certainly feel like a lot of the advice that is given to new producers is take clients out golfing, go to the bars, build relationships that way. And that's not necessarily going to work for someone like me. So a lot of the advice that was given in my first production role wasn't available for me to take advantage of. And so I had to find a different way. And that's actually how I really got into the LinkedIn stuff and building my brand and building a community there and establishing myself as an authority, because I knew I had to build my business in a different way, because I'm not a golfer. I'm not a drinker. I'm not going to win business on a cocktail napkin at a bar. I'm just not. I think from the differences in doing business, it all comes down to who are the type of people that would want to work with someone like me, with someone that thinks the way I do, with someone that solves problems the way I do, with someone that runs a team the way that I do. I think a lot of times A lot of the producers that we have in this industry, they have the last name or they have the Rolodex. And so people work with them because of that, right? But there are also buyers out there that want to just work with someone that knows their stuff, that they can rely on, that they know thinks similarly and delivers the level of client service that they're expecting. And so sometimes that's going to trump a relationship, right? So what I've done is I've created this ideal client profile and I stick to that. I'm not going to be for everyone, and that's okay. I don't have to be for everyone, but I do have to be for the group of people that would want to work with someone like me. So the disadvantages are I'm not a man. I don't have a golf membership and I don't go out drinking at bars. But the advantages are I'm a really hard worker. I go to bat for my clients every single day. I think differently and act differently than a lot of my male counterparts, good, bad, or indifferent. I just do. And so I think that's my advantage in a way, is that I offer a different client experience and different outcomes that a certain, group of people are going to really appreciate and want to work with.
We could spend an hour just talking about that last little foray there, but the reality is I probably identify more with you than I do with my peer group, because you and I are the same pretty much on everything that you just said. So I'm so thankful that you brought that up, because that's one of the things that when I'm working with a new producer, one of the things I say all the time is the industry gets activity and productivity confused.
Yeah.
We think that if we're making activity, that we're making forward progress, when we're really just on a treadmill running. Whereas if you're being productive, you're taking that activity and actually turning it into something, and you're doing the right activities to make forward progress.
Yeah.
And everybody needs to figure out, what is my ideal client profile, period. Like, what's my ideal prospect profile, period. And I can rattle them off left and right. I have 3 to 5 that I've identified. I stick with them. It was well thought out. It was based on the carrier mix. It was based on the geographic density and opportunity. And it's not like I just was throwing darts at a map saying, hey, I think I'll prospect here today. It was analytical in thought process. And it took me a long time initially to build my pipeline, and I got a lot of pressure for it. How come you're taking so long? You're not putting enough new business on the books yet. Da 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 da. The reality is, I blew everybody else out of the water 5 to 6x at the end of the first year, because I took the time to build the foundation that I was going to live off of for the rest of my life. And one of the things I tell people that are new to the industry is, in my community online for coaching and everything, I have the ability to talk to both the producers and the agency owners at that agency. So I can say, listen, I understand that you've got some pressure here because you're investing in this person, but let me tell you why we're doing this, and get the heck out of my way. You paid me to help you train your producers because you didn't know how to do it or weren't doing it. You need to adopt what I'm telling you, because I promise you it's been proven to work over and over and over again. You've got to get your ideal prospects lined up, and you've got to build a pipeline full of that. And it sounds stupid to say it, but using my example, if you're going to have to go out and produce accounts that are 25 to 50,000 in revenue, and you have a pipeline that's accounts of 25 to 50,000 in revenue, and you only focus on accounts that are 25 to 50,000 in revenue, what are you going to produce? You're going to produce accounts that are 25 to 50,000 in revenue in those ideal profiles that you've selected. So if you've got a $5,000 BOP that from junior high that wants you to do them a favor on insurance, you need to understand how to gracefully redirect them to somebody who's better suited to help them, because you might think you're doing them a favor. You're doing both you and them a disservice, because if you're set up to service and sell middle market accounts, you're not set up to service and sell $5,000 BOPs. Too many times the production pressure leads people to make bad decisions and go after business that they shouldn't, because agency principals, by and large, at least in the circle of people that I run with, they lose patience. They don't want to give people the time to get their pipeline built and then prospect that pipeline and then allow the sales cycle to work. It absolutely blows my mind. The industry is not that complicated. It really is very, very easy. we make it complicated because we don't just want to stick to the basic mundane things,
Yep.
the non-sexy things that work
Yep.
every single day. We have to be, I put a post up earlier this week and I said, we all want to be Kevin James when Hitch is telling him how to dance before he goes
Yes.
out with Alexis Cole, right?
Yep.
He wants to do everything but. And Will Smith says, elbows at the waist, back and forth. You stay here. You
Mhm.
don't leave here all night. He's doing all of this wild crap when the reality is all you got to do is stay in your lane. And we have such a hard time doing that. I just don't get it. Especially when you have people who have built million and multi-million dollar books that are saying, this is the way we did it. There's no secret. The secret's hard work, getting up every day, showing up, doing the same activities over and over again, and getting predictable results because of that.
Exactly. And I think it's desperation. A lot of it's desperation because when you put producers in a desperate frame of mind, and what I mean by that is, okay, we hired you, and by year one, we want you to have $75,000 in revenue. What are you going to do when that clock's ticking? You're going to start calling on anyone and everyone. You're going to write that $5,000 BOP. You're going to do all of these things that don't fall within your ideal client profile because you're desperate. And if we could just figure out as an industry to set our producers up for success, take that desperation piece out of it. Obviously, we all want to produce. We're in sales. That's the end goal. But our industry is very unique in the sense that it's a longer sales cycle. It's a relationship that you're building. It's a divorce that you're causing between a service provider that they're already working with. You don't have to be an insurance expert. In fact, I wouldn't consider myself a super technical seller. I have a lot of people on my team that are very, very technical and do that day in and day out. What I do is I understand business. I understand business owners' motivations. When they have issues, I come up with solutions. And that's really what it is. Like, let's not overcomplicate it and make it something that it's not. But when you have desperation thrown into the mix, people start making bad decisions and it ends up hurting them in the long run because those decisions are going to impact their ability to build a book and be successful in this business.
Yeah, and I think, to your point, if you want to be an insurance technician, you probably need to be an underwriter and not a producer. I mean, as a producer, there is a certain level of functional knowledge that you need to have. I have my CIC for that reason because it gave me a little bit of a jump start because I came from outside the industry. I ran grocery stores for a decade before I got into to insurance in grocery stores and super targets. So on the ops side, I've had total P&L responsibility since I was 22 years old, which makes it very easy for me to go and talk to business owners and controllers and CFOs because I understand the operational side of what they're doing, maybe not specific to their industry, but I certainly can learn that and apply general principles to some of that. But I also wanted to kind of know what it was that I needed to know about insurance when I went out, and CIC definitely did the job there to help me. And then that parlayed into my CRM. And then ultimately, I also have my certified work comp advisor designation, but I'm not the guy that runs around flaunting designations. I don't, I've got friends that have so many, they have to have them on the back of their business card. And I ask them all the time, like, how do you have time to sell? It seems like you're in continuing ed every day, to keep up your designations. It doesn't make sense. But you do have to have a functional level of that. And I tell people sarcastically, but it's true. Like, I don't know that I've ever gone in to cold call somebody to do a marketing drop or whatever else, and the CFO immediately comes out and says, hey, could you please explain this CG 2010 endorsement to me? Nobody's going to ask you that question as a producer. Nobody's going to walk out with their policy binder and ask you to review it on the spot. You have to know that you've got people behind you that have your back, to your point, have good technicians there, but you don't have to necessarily be the expert. You need to be the expert in opening the door, building the relationship, and then executing on whatever the service plan is that you line out for that person as the quarterback. But you can't be the quarterback and the offensive line and the wide receiver and the running back. You have to be what you're going to be. And I mean, I think that the people who have that skill set figured out are the ones that are the absolute best producers out there. Now, you said something that I'm glad you said because it reminded me of something that I wanted to talk about that we didn't talk about before I hit the record button. So I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I don't think that I am. So one of the things you mentioned is, you don't play golf, you don't drink. And I want you to talk about that for a second, because one of the things that originally caught my eye about you was the fact that you just cold turkey decided, you know what? Not going to drink anymore. Didn't really have a reason that I'm aware of that you needed to do that. It was just you decided it's not really doing it for me. There's no reason for me to do
Yeah.
it. And you had a fairly well documented journey around the fact that you went, and I remember that you had your 1 year anniversary, and I'm sure you're still going strong because you said you
Yeah.
don't drink today. But I know that you have also partnered with some other friends of mine, like Brendan Core, who actually
Yeah.
did struggle from alcoholism, and he's very
Mhm.
open and talks about it. Talk about why you made that decision, number one, and number two, what has it done for you, and looking back now at what life was like before, because we are in an industry where all you got to do is go to an insurance conference.
Yeah.
I tell this story all the time, but my wife would give me a hard time because I would go speak somewhere or I would go to an industry event, and at 7:30 at night I'm chatting with her on Facebook Messenger or whatever. And she's like, "Why aren't you out with your friends? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that?" And so I took her to an event one time, and she saw what happens at insurance
Uh-huh.
events, and her first thing is this what happens when you come to these things and you're not with me? And I said, and that's exactly why you don't need to be busting my chops about why I'm in the
Yeah.
room talking to you at 7:30 at night, instead of going around with these hooligans, acting like we're still in college and have no actual
Uh-huh.
familial and professional responsibility. It's a crazy industry. And I think that and I'm interested to hear what you have to say. My perception is, and my experience is, that if you don't drink and go
Mhm.
out and do those things, that you're looked at in a different light, and you're constantly pressured because
Mhm.
it's so normally accepted by everybody in the industry that we're just going to go out and get hammered when we go to a carrier dinner or an insurance conference or whatever else. That's actually a huge differentiator for you. And from my perspective, it gives you an advantage as a producer because it's something positive that you can talk about, but the mental
Yeah.
clarity that you have to have means you're never operating in the fog.
Exactly. Ah, gosh, I could talk about this for hours, but ultimately the decision was this. I had a vision for who I wanted to be and what I wanted my life to look like. And I realized that alcohol was not in that picture. I was someone that didn't drink regularly, as in like I wasn't drinking every day. But when I did drink, I probably drank a little bit too much, like at an event or at a wedding. Like it was something, I wasn't the one glass of wine type of girl. If I was drinking because I didn't drink regularly, I was like, oh, I'm gonna let loose. I'm gonna have fun. And it didn't sit well with me. Like the next day I was tired and my stomach and I just didn't feel well. So I realized, okay, Madison, if you have these big lofty goals, if you want your life to look like this, what does your day look like? And I wrote down this list of what my day looks like, waking up at 5 a.m., getting a workout in, Bible study, all these things. And I was like, okay, what's holding you back from achieving that? And I had a list of things, and alcohol was on that list. And I was like, I wonder if I remove alcohol, what that would produce for me. Because I realized that alcohol inherently what it was is it robs you of tomorrow's happiness. And so it began as an experiment. I told my husband, I'm going to give up alcohol for a year. I had done challenges before, like dry January. I'd done 75 hard. So I've given up alcohol before, but 1 year was such a big goal that it was just scary enough for me to challenge myself to do it. And what I learned was giving up alcohol was quite literally the biggest life hack that I could have ever done. So that list that I talked about earlier that I made, actually giving up alcohol was like 90% of what was holding me back. Even though I wasn't an everyday drinker, the effects that alcohol had on me in the days after, it had such a big impact that 90% of those issues I was having holding me back from being that person that I wanted myself to be were tied to alcohol. The mental clarity, the time that you get back when you realize how much time you waste in a bar or at an industry event drinking, or the amount of sleep you lose. I mean, it adds like an entire day to your week when you remove alcohol. You're so much more productive. You're so much more clear-minded. And also, something that a lot of people don't talk about is the confidence piece. I have never been more confident than when I've walked into an industry event fully sober, and looking around and seeing everyone, spitting while they're talking, slurring their words, making those decisions that they're going to regret the next day, embarrassing themselves. A lot of people think that confidence comes from being a little bit looser from alcohol, but I find that it's the opposite. When you're so sure about who you are and who you are showing up as, in the next day, showing up as that same person with no embarrassment, no regret, all mental clarity, you gain this new level of self-awareness and self-respect. And I think to your question about the impact it has on how you're perceived, at first, I did get a lot of that pressure, like, oh, just have one drink. Why can't you have one drink? You're not an alcoholic. You don't have a problem with alcohol, Madison. Come on. Just
Like peer pressure is worse as an adult than it was in high school.
Right?
It's crazy.
Right. And so it started that way. But now, David, what it's morphed into is going to a conference in Vegas with my colleagues, them cheersing me with my soda and lime, and my colleague looking me in the eye and saying, I'm so proud of you and I look up to you. He said, you are 20 years younger than me. And he was like, you're so much smarter. You're going to accomplish so much more. And I respect you so much. And last week he told me that he gave up alcohol.
That's awesome.
And
That's fantastic.
You really get to have an impact on people just by vulnerably sharing my journey on LinkedIn. Do you know how many people have messaged me and told me that they gave up alcohol because
I can't imagine, but I mean, it's the greatest feeling in the world when you get those messages. I mean,
Oh
it's
my
no
gosh.
different than, hey, you put this post up and I tried this and it worked and I won an account for doing this or that.
Exactly.
That's better than any dollar that I'll ever make, is knowing that you've had the ability to share some piece of something that's helped you that then somebody else has taken and run with, and it's helped them too. Like that's a huge reward for me, and it's really the fuel that feeds the fire for anything.
Oh, exactly. And two, from a business perspective, do you know how many executives reached out to me and said, hey, Madison, I'm 14 years sober. I'd love to hear about your journey. Let's get coffee.
Yep.
I mean, having an executive at a prospect reach out to you, like, that's a business hack. And you don't realize until you're sober how many people are sober, because like not a lot of people talk about it, right? So I had a lot of people that reached out to me and they're like, I really want to hear your story. I would love to get coffee. I would love to hear more. And that's just organic relationship building. Like, it's building my business just by sharing authentically what I'm going through and the challenges that I'm facing. So I think that's also the power of vulnerability and authenticity on a platform like LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think, I'm going to give you a male perspective to this too, albeit a not popular one, but I think that I owe it out of respect to my wife too, to not conduct myself that way, because the reality is there's plenty of heavy drinking that's followed by plenty of infidelity in your relationship. And I didn't get married to my wife so that I could turn around and find somebody that was hanging out in a bar with me and I make a bad decision because I drank too much. But I would never be at risk of doing that. My bigger concern is the perception that I'm just like everybody else and that I fall victim to the same things when I don't. Like, there's absolutely nothing in this world that would break that bond that I have with her. So it's as much, and this is one of the things that we had talked about, I said, it's as much out of respect for you that I don't get perceived to be one of the boys when you go out and do this, because now you've seen what one of the boys looks like. And like, literally taking people that we have gone to dinner with as couples, and the wife is at home, but the husband's at an insurance conference trying to pick up some whatever, in the bar. And I'm like pulling this guy away and saying, it's time to go back to the hotel. And my wife's like watching all of this happen. I'm like, this is not what I want to be party to. I'm not comfortable in this environment. This isn't, number one, it's not how I was raised. It's not how I'm raising my own kids. And, there's a lot of eyes on you, just in your own family about how you conduct yourself that way. And with 4 children, I can promise you, I've got to make the right decisions for their sake as much as anything else.
100%. And I think as a society, we've normalized alcohol so much that you're the weird one if you don't partake.
Right.
And that's an issue. I think people are more shocked if I said I didn't drink water than if I say I don't drink alcohol. So it's a societal shift that I do see slowly happening. I mean, I'll go to restaurants now and I see mocktail menus, and I'm seeing this sober curious movement pick up. And I truly believe, David, that maybe 5, 10, 15 years from now, we're going to look as a society at alcohol the way that my generation looks at cigarettes. And I hope that's the case, because at the end of the day, it's poison. It changes your brain chemistry. It impacts every area of your life, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of it. And that's undeniable. It's been proven in scientific studies. And so I think as an industry, we've a really far way to come with that. And a lot of industries do. Investment banking, law. I see heavy drinking in a lot of industries, but we need to make this more normalized, that people don't have to drink. We don't have to drink into oblivion. We can win business, get deals done, forge relationships without alcohol in the picture. And in fact, if we lean more into that, you will reach a deeper level of connection with people. You'll get more productivity out of your teams. You'll have overall happiness boost for people in their family life and their work life. I mean, the benefits are really countless, but I think it's an issue when our industry promotes it and normalizes it so much.
I agree. Well, listen, we've been going almost an hour. What have we missed?
What have we missed?
I told you it would go quick.
I know. I think the only thing that we missed that we talked about was LinkedIn and kind of how I got there.
Talk about that just for a few minutes. I mean, we've got a few, so spend as much time as you want. I don't have anywhere to be, but I want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah, no, of course. I think the LinkedIn stuff has probably been beaten a little bit over the head, but my perspective might be a little bit different. So, as a female producer who realized I had to do things differently, I saw that LinkedIn presented me an opportunity to present myself as an authority in this space, to bring value to not only my prospects and clients, but also the industry. And so I think with LinkedIn, if you're deciding to build a brand, which I think any person actually in the industry should really invest in their personal brand, the ROI is there, because it's not just about wearing the logo for your company. It's about wearing the logo that is your name, because your name is attached to what people are doing business. People are doing business with you. They're not doing business with the logo. So you need to invest in your personal brand. And I give every, new person that I mentor in this industry the same advice. Decide what you want to be known for, and build your brand around those pillars. You have to be educational. You have to be, authentic to who you are. And you have to show a little bit of your personality, because your brand is yourself as a person. It's going to look a little bit different than what your company's brand looks like. And that's good. That's what you want, because your brand is what follows you. And ultimately, it gives you the power to build something for yourself. I think, like you said, you're not built to work for someone else. You're working for yourself. I'm very similar. I'm entrepreneurial spirited. I believe that I run a business within my business. And so that's why I built my brand, because that's what it is, and it will always come with me. So that's my biggest piece of advice for new folks in the industry is invest in yourself, invest in your brand, and know that at the end of the day, it's you who people are buying. It's you who people are trusting. Your company comes with resources and tools and all the cool things. But at the end of the day, you have to invest in yourself, because that's really what your moneymaker is. So that's just my 2 cents. It's been super fruitful and beneficial for me in building my business.
Well, and I would add on to that and say, if you're an agency owner that has a problem with your people building a personal brand in conjunction with working with you, you are going to take some of your most entrepreneurial and best producers and alienate them, and they will go work somewhere where they are allowed to do that, because all that's going to happen is it's going to benefit you. Give them the freedom and the creativity to do that within the confines of obviously what's acceptable. But, I see too many people that are of a scarcity mindset that sit in my chair, and they don't want that, because they don't want the focus to be on that individual producer building a brand. They want that producer to build the agency's brand. The reality is they are building the agency's brand. They're showing more diversity by you giving them the freedom and the creative license to go out and build their own brand. And I mean, I will tell you, there are a few people that I follow on LinkedIn that I just think do an incredible job of it, and you are certainly one of them. There is a touch and a feel to every post that you put up that if you were to hide the profile name and any pictures, I would be able to tell you that that was your post just based off of
Amazing.
how it's written. And I think that, that's a pat on your back for doing that, because in a time where so many people are using Chat GPT to generate
Yeah.
content and find the easy way out, it's like Robert Frost's poem. It's the road less traveled that's ultimately gonna give you the win in the end. And so I would just tell you, that I'm only one person, and I know that you have already said you get messages about the alcohol and everything else, but that is being noticed, and I would just urge you to continue doing that, because that's what the industry needs more of, and that uniqueness inside of what would probably look like the starched white shirt agency
Yeah.
that Marsh McLennan is.
Yeah.
The fact that you can, put some pink and some lace and some other things around it and talk about your family and your pets and all of that only strengthens their brand. And the agencies that figure that out and they encourage it are going to always outperform the people who discourage it, in my opinion, because honestly, that mindset is a sort of a symptom of a much deeper, problem when you look into things. But that's probably a conversation for a different day. So we will wrap up here. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. I think that my audience is going to have a treat for hearing this conversation. You've done so many wonderful things in what's probably a short time of what will be a much longer career that may or may not have you end where you are right now, but only your personal brand will dictate what that ending looks like. And I hope that you continue to build it in the way that you have. I sincerely appreciate you joining me today, and just thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, David. I really appreciate the conversation and all the kind words. I look forward to doing this again. I know we have a lot more to talk about.
Absolutely. Open invite anytime. We'll figure out when we need to run it back. But I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll talk soon, I'm sure.
Sounds good. Thanks, David. Bye.
Yes, ma'am.